Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. It's my first time in Serbia, and I'm glad you have the sunshine out. That's always a plus for a Brit. So, UK Interactive Entertainment, we celebrated our 30th birthday last year, and given that the games industry really is only about 40-something years old, that was quite an achievement. I've been in this job since 2012. And I was brought on board in order to change the way that the organization worked and what it did, because we used to only represent publishers in the UK. And then in 2010, around about then, we rebranded and we said, look, we need to represent the whole of the industry in the UK. This is about creating and nurturing an entire ecosystem. So we opened our doors to developers, indie studios, or anybody in the games industry as a company. So now, when I joined, we had about 55 companies as members. We now have over 480 companies as members. But our attitude is sort of like we are here for the whole sector. We don't care if you're a member or not, but it is important to join a trade body, as you'll see through this presentation. So we have two kinds of members. We have full members, so those who are working directly in games, who are making games, selling games, publishing them, esports companies, immersive companies, VR, AR, all sizes. And we have a lot of partner members because they're the ones who would like to service the industry and get business from the products that you make and sell. And sometimes they are extremely helpful to have those kind of legal firms and PR firms and so on as part of the ecosystem. And crucially, what's really important is this kind of growing the grassroots of the industry, really inspiring the new talents that comes into the industry and helping them to find their way from school to university, if they want to, into jobs in the industry and to stay in the UK or come to Serbia. It's okay. So we have an academic membership as well. So that's we have a lot of games courses in the UK at university level, but also computer science and maths and arts degrees. And we have 3,000 plus students as members. And the university pays for them £15 a head, cheaper than a game, way cheaper than a game nowadays, unless it's a free game. So that's really important because that means that we're trying to help the next generation understand this really fast-moving industry. The games industry, working in it, is so changeable. Every 6 months there's something new, or there's so many different business models. So it's really a challenge to keep up. And students and people who are lecturers and teaching have to be kept in contact with the industry. So this is a way in which we do that. So every organization needs to have a mission statement. You saw our mission statement, which is to make the UK the best place in the world to make, sell, and play games. But our role really is about advocacy, about supporting the industry, about promoting the industry, and really making sure that the political environment, which dictates the business environment that you work in as companies, is stable and not doing silly things that are going to put barriers in the way of business. So we cover a lot of policy work. A lot of what we do is political lobbying, meeting politicians all the time, in and out of parliaments, taking them to studios, and so on. We also do a lot of international and national trade work because a lot of startups in particular don't necessarily have the ability to do their own business plans sometimes, or the opportunity to meet with people with finance, or with people who are going to give them other opportunities. As I said, we do a lot of education work. We do a lot of IP scanning work now, particularly around skin betting sites and kind of newer forms of IP protection and promotion. And we do a lot of events, but we don't really sort of call them events. And I think crucially, one of the most important things that we do is really telling that story to people in other industries, to politicians, that games are part of culture. We're an economic powerhouse. We're a $140 billion business globally, but we're culturally really significant and growing in significance. About 3 or 4 years ago, we created these beliefs that we subscribe to and some values as an organization, because I think it's important. If I have a staff of about 20 people who work at Ukie, And I think it's really important that we understand how we do things as an organization and why we're doing it. And broadly, the beliefs are the things that drive us, that we believe that games talent should be at the heart of the cultural conversation. What you do as developers and people in the industry should be at the heart of the cultural conversation. We are the bleeding edge of entertainment and going way beyond entertainment and innovation. We also believe that it's not just important for the next generation at schools to be learning coding and programming and maths and sciences or STEM subjects. It's also really critically important that we have artists, that we have people in other disciplines, because we're storytellers. We interpret data. We have to have the greatest artists. So combining those subjects at school level is incredibly important. And I think in the 21st century society, we need those critical skills and those systems thinking skills in order for any citizen to flourish. And games, as this point at which technology and innovation collides with arts and storytelling, means that we should be at the heart of the innovation conversation in the UK and globally. I'm not going to go through these. These are all available on our website. But there's also some values that guide us. Our members always come first. We always try and get evidence and data for how we want to lobby government or what we want to say to underpin and make more powerful what we want to say. We don't do events, we connect people. We give people opportunities to meet people, to network. And sometimes we provide those opportunities ourselves, sometimes we just promote others and their events or their opportunities. We want to be inclusive in everything we do. Diversity and inclusion I'll talk about a little bit more later, but we practice it, and it's hard to do. We don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk. We're not traditional salespeople, but we are interested in how we can make sure that people are getting value out of their membership. So we listen. A good trade body and a good body that represents your interests listens to you and tries to put that into a way that's going to make good stuff happen for you. And we always want to work in partnership with people. We're not closed. We're not an untransparent organization. We want to partner with as many people in organizations as possible. This is just a range of some of the things. It tends to feature beer quite a lot at global events. We have the biggest the biggest country stand at Gamescom, which we've grown over the last 8 years. But we just like to get people together, whether that be in Parliament, whether that be at trade shows, whether that be in our own offices, whether that be at our annual general meeting, or whether that be getting students together with industry to do the biggest ever student game jam, I think, in the world, with a green theme this year. And we have a number of initiatives. We're not just about kind of representing you as a sector. We have initiatives. We're very proactive. We like to actually enable things to happen, but also make things happen ourselves. So Ask About Games is really important. This is where families can make sense of video games. I'll be talking quite a lot about this later on, so I'll come back to that. We also have an education program which teaches computational thinking in a really creative, inspiring way to very young school pupils, but really that program is about training teachers so that we can inspire all sorts of people into our industry and into an industry that they didn't even realize exists on their doorstep. We also have a video games ambassador school speaker network so that we put different people in schools doing assemblies or doing workshops or just giving a careers talk. And we have some other initiatives that I'll go into as well. So the advocacy part is really important. In the UK, it's been fairly difficult politically. We had a general election again. We have had 5 culture secretary of states in 5 years. Every single time we think we're getting somewhere with Brexit, there's been another delay. And apparently at the end of this month, we will be leaving Europe. But getting that advocacy right in terms of educating politicians who make policy decisions that may hinder our businesses or help our businesses is important. So we run, we do, as I say, a lot of studio visits, but we also take games and game developers to Parliament a lot of the time. This on the right was when I had different hair, and we had a round table with some politicians who were interested in VR and some of the innovative stuff we were doing. We've also done the same around games and mental health, and we took in Ninja Theory, Tameen from Ninja Theory, and Glitches to show the work that they'd been doing in their games to support mental health, but also to support actual scientific research. So it's very important that we make sure that decision makers understand games, understand the way that we monetize ethically, the way that we monetize within consumer practice, within consumer protection laws, and the economic value. You know, politicians really care about jobs and about the economy, but they also do care about culture. And I think it's probably common throughout the world that when you speak to a lot of people who don't play games or understand games, they always sort of see culture as films and art, which is all wonderful. The games are part of that. We are art. We are storytelling. We are incredibly powerful. And actually, our products and our games are reaching the eyeballs of the audiences that the film industry and other industries want. So it is important that politicians understand the cultural value. We also do a lot of educating the media and the press, because sometimes the media and the press doesn't necessarily understand games either. And if they put Fortnite in a headline, they know they're going to get a lot of clicks, because a lot of parents and families still don't understand games like Fortnite and why it's been such a playground phenomenon. I and my team are the ones who will be the human shield for the industry. So when there's a negative story in the press, I'm the one who gets wheeled out and gets attacked on media. And I try and do the best job I can. It can be a challenge. We don't want any particular companies or games in the firing line. The trade body is there to educate, to represent the sector, which is providing jobs, which is providing money into the economy, and which is enriching our lives. And this is just a snapshot of how we do some of the political work. The top right, we invited as part of the creative industries to 10 Downing Street, which is very exciting. I met Larry the Cat, which is the highlight for me. Downing Street Cat, he's on Twitter, you should follow him. Top left is when we took an MP, Daniel Zeitner, who had some questions about 2 years ago about loot boxes, and we took him to Jagex, which was right on his doorstep in his local constituency, and he didn't really even realize. And he saw the enormity of the data teams, the community teams, the creators, and he then fully understood what Jagex does and what games businesses do in terms of different kind of uses of monetization models. And that's also Daniel at bottom left there, who was visiting Ninja Theory, again, another company in his constituency. What we really love doing is putting politicians into VR. It's really fun. And at the bottom there, we have an example of, we have a Westminster Games Day and a Westminster reception for our members and for politicians to meet some of the developers, to meet charities like Special Effect, who are doing incredible work with people with disabilities. Bottom right is a chance for, that was actually Keir Starmer, who may be the new leader of the Labour Party, and he's the local MP for Space 8 games. So that was him seeing how live games work and how data analytics work in a creative way. Our international trade is really important. We are immediate exporters as games companies. Our products are enjoyed globally, but they're not necessarily measured as a traditional export by governments. It's funny because it's not a physical thing that you can touch. It's not a car. It's a virtual car. So it's difficult for them to understand. But you know, it is important that we enable companies, particularly small companies, to be able to access international marketplaces like GDC, like Gamescom. We do a trade mission where we take 20 or so companies out to China and China Joy, which is incredible. If you've not been, you should try and go. And we also host companies who are looking to work with the best developers or the best publishers or best companies in the UK. So we will handpick them and host them in our office and do pitching sessions. We also, this last year, took a trade mission out to the Intel Extreme Masters tournament just to see how that would work. And we also take a mission out to Slush. So it's important that we help curate the right companies curate the experience for people so that they're not left on their own. They're there with a bunch of other companies from the UK. One of the key things that we do is something that we're very, very proud of called Games London. And that's part of some of the trade missions we do, but it's also host to the London Games Festival. And the London Games Festival, you're all welcome to join us. It's a 12-day celebration of games and culture. It hosts things like Now Play This at Somerset House. We have a huge finance market where we matchmake people with funding with people who are looking for funding. And we do, for the second year, we've done this incredible exhibition of BAME in games, people who are working in games called Ensemble. And the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, came and opened the festival this year. It's partly funded by the cultural department of the London Mayor's team. So he recognizes how important games are, not just economically, but culturally. And this year, I kept a secret for 2 years. I was sworn to secrecy by the Royal Mail when they approached us about, we're thinking of doing a special collection of video game stamps, and we want to recognize iconic games that were made in the UK from the 80s and 90s. I was like, can't you do it in 2019, because that's our 30th birthday, and that would be awesome. I said, no, it takes 2 years, it has to be approved by the Queen, etc. So I told nobody until about 3 weeks ago when they told us when they were launching this. If you haven't bought them, go buy them. It's amazing, the Royal Mail. Now we need to figure out who we're going to write to. Who does that? So we are a really important story as an industry, no matter what country you're based in. But in the UK, we're an important story to the creative industries as a sector. So that covers things like film and publishing, as in traditional book publishing, music, etc. And a lot of my job is sitting around the table and sitting in council meetings and sitting with the other creative industries so that we can together lobby government with the most powerful message to unlock incentives or to ask government for things that are going to help grow the creative industries. The UK's creative industries are worth £10 million an hour to the UK economy. And actually in times of uncertainty, times of recession, times when people are confused about life, entertainment products and cultural products are the thing that people gravitate to help them make sense of the world. And if you look, this is a fairly old, it's actually 2018. But if you look at the value of the creative industries in the UK, you'll see that, I've got a pointy thing. Where's the cat? Oh, no. You'll see that games are in this kind of section of IT, software, and games as part of the creative industries. We're bigger and worth more to the economy than film, architecture, advertising, etc. And in terms of exports, we're gigantic. We are. So again, having that kind of data and clubbing together with the other creative industries is very important to get good things done. And the reason why our creative industries are, I think, really world-beating is that we're a bit weird as British people, in case you hadn't noticed. We have, as all cultures, your cultural background, the kind of experiences you've gone through as a country, kind of shape who you are and how you deal with things. And we have this blend of talent that's really quite unique, but is not unreplicable. We have top-class education in the creative industries and creative arts, but we also have top-class production facilities. Soho is really well known for a lot of the post-production. We've innovated a lot and had a lot of support around really new ways of making films that bleed over from games and vice versa. And we have fantastic animation sector as well. We're just a nation of storytellers, as many nations are. So, obviously, we're important in the UK, but the games industry globally is very significant, as we know. In terms of the European games industry, it's worth about 21 billion euros. We all know the figures. It's more like 3 billion people who play games around the world. And we probably are familiar with the lines that game sales are greater than music and video combined. We constantly get the press kind of going, are you sure? Phoning us up, yes. Here's some figures, here's some figures, here's some figures. I did an interview the other day where I sort of threw in a comment that 99% of kids play games. And they phoned us up like 2 days later. It's like, nobody in the office believes us. Okay, here's the data, here's the data, here's the data. I love these figures and I love these statements, and we're very proud, and it's just so weird, and that just tells us a lot about the modern games industry, that a game that was released in 2013 essentially is still the highest grossing entertainment product of all time, beating any films. Again, you'll get the journalist kind of, are you sure? Yes, here's the figures. And in the UK, people love playing games, so 1 in 3 people play regularly. We're the 6th equal largest consumer market in the world. In terms of companies, we have over 2,000 active games companies across the UK. And that's down from one-person studios up to 500 plus companies. But 70% of them were started after 2010. And guess what? That's because of the mobile smartphone ecosystem and App Store ecosystem that made it much easier in some ways, particularly back in those days, to get your game out to the public. And we are a nation of small companies in the games industry. 89% of companies employ less than 10 people, but they actually contribute significantly to the economy in terms of gross value added. And we are the leading destination for games development in Europe, despite what France and Germany and other places might say. And this is another figure that people constantly kind of go, are you sure? So we know that the average age of someone who plays games is in their mid-30s, and that's globally. We also know across all platforms, including mobile, by the way, which if we call it casual, let's not call it casual, okay? Let's not call mobile games casual. It's more or less 50-50 male-female split. Obviously, different genres appeal to different people, just like films and books and everything else. But your average or typical person who plays games in the UK is a 43-year-old woman, well-educated, who likes other cultural activities and is passionate about the arts. And again, that was research done by Nesta, which is a great organization in the UK that looks after innovation, creativity. And people, are you sure? Are you sure? Yes, the biggest growing demographic is over 40s. People still don't believe it. And in the UK, we have this buzzwords are everyone's favorite things because you can build a business around buzzwords, but it is hilarious. In the beginning of, I guess, when VR was beginning and its hype cycle properly, I would sit around tables with film directors or film people or TV people, and they would talk about VR when they would hear a presentation from someone doing something incredible in games. And they'd say, fascinating. Imagine a non-linear scripted drama in this 3-dimensional immersive environment, and you don't necessarily know where the story's going to go or where the person enjoying the story is. This is groundbreaking about VR. And is it pains to point out that, well, we've sort of been doing that in games for about 35 years, and the skills that the reason why VR is being more successful in games industry than other sectors, arguably, define success, is because we're used to people kind of just wandering around like, no, go over there. Let's use lighting to make them go over here and get to the next level. So we're used to people doing things in these environments, whereas I think a lot of traditional linear industries kind of struggle with VR and they kind of do 360 video. I think it's moving on quite a lot now, but I think to be fair, we have the skill sets as the games industry to really move the dial when it comes to immersive experiences. And I think immersive has become a safe word for a lot of people instead of games, which I find quite interesting. That, by the way, if you hadn't recognized, is David Attenborough, who was featured in this VR experience at the Natural History Museum, which is fantastic because he will live forever in virtual reality. You'll always be able to sit down and have a chat with him and pick up some bones that you're not allowed to pick up normally. And of course, we're really innovating in terms of production techniques that the film industry and other industries are using, like real-time rendering and virtual production techniques that Jon Favreau has been using in the likes of Lion King. This is, again, Ninja Theory. I use quite a lot of Ninja Theory examples because I think they're really fantastic at what they have done and what they achieved with Hellblade. And their motion capture studio, they got all the stuff from IKEA, and they just turned their boardroom into a mocap studio to make Hellblade, which I think is fantastic. So we now have a new body that represents the immersive economy, and that goes beyond entertainment as well into enterprise solutions and how engineers and car manufacturers are using virtual reality, medical services. But they released this report last year, which is incredibly valuable. I'd recommend you have a look at it. So they recognize that the entertainment market for VR is likely to grow faster than any other entertainment and media sector. But also entertainment is driving a lot of VR, despite what investors might say. And of course, we have these exciting things which normal people who don't play games kind of understand a little bit more, but they still go, which is esports. This is ESL 1 in Birmingham in the UK, which is a fantastic event. It's coming back this year. And people will say, you'll have experienced this. People are like, so what's esports? It's like, well, it's a bit like going to see it's a cross between a music gig and a big sport arena event, and thousands of people gather physically to cheer on their favorite team. So, well, I don't understand. I don't understand. Why would people want to watch people play games? And I always counter with, well, I don't understand why people want to watch people dressed in white with a red ball hitting it with a wooden bat called cricket. I have no idea what's going on. It's a bit like Dota. So, it's like this kind of, people can understand this, and politicians understand esports, because what that means is tourism and money to a local area. If you get thousands of those people who are buying food and paying for accommodation in your city when they descend on it for 2 or 3 days, that's money into the local economy. So they can understand that. That's tangible. So I'm just going to go a little bit into some stuff that gives you a little sense of the kind of things that we're about to launch, but I can't really talk about. But it tells you a lot more detail about the UK industry and the ecosystem. So next week, we're launching a industry report looking at all the local clusters. So unlike the traditional creative industries across the UK, we have a lot of companies that are clustered in locations outside of London. Typically, like Brexit happened because everyone hates the focus on London, essentially. But we as an industry have major centres across the UK, which politicians love as well. And telling that story is really important. Telling it through data is even more important. Because that means that companies based in Leamington Spa, for instance, or in Liverpool, are there to provide jobs. And again, that's what local politicians in particular like to hear. And they're there to provide opportunity for people. And this report that we're going to be launching next week has taken data from another report that happened in 2016. And it tells us really interesting things like 55% of game development jobs are outside of London, which if you weren't from the UK or you were looking to set up business in the UK, you'd probably assume that most of the industry is in London. But in fact, it's not. And the reason why it's throughout the country is, of course, Dundee is a fantastic cluster. You're more likely to bump into games businesses than any other kind of business when you're in Dundee. And that's because of historical reasons. You had GTA or DMA Designs start there by an apprentice in the Timex factory that made the Spectrum, who decided to do something fun with these machines. And you also now have Abertay University, which has the best games course in the world. And they really support young talent. So it's really about growing that cluster. Other clusters are because you had big studios that set up there that have since closed down, but spawned lots of other companies around it because people have made their lives in places like Liverpool or Leamington, and indeed Brighton. Brighton, it's by the sea. It's a nice city. There's lots of arts. I think games industry loves artistic, bohemian type culture as well. There's a lot of tech. but it's by the sea and it's cheaper than London. And again, you know, we're providing joy for a huge number of people. We do this kind of data every year. Again, the importance of data, the importance of evidence that we can point to. So we do a consumer valuation. We're just doing the one for 2019, so I can't show you those figures. But the consumer spend, we count as not just on games themselves, not just on the software or mobile games. We also look at the surrounding spend. So if you, like with anything, if you love something, you might want the toy, you might want the merchandise, you might want to go to an event, you might get the movie or soundtrack, the soundtrack, or you might go and watch the movie. Possibly not. There's not been a great history of games IP to movies. So we make sure that we count everything in the ecosystem of value for consumer spend. And I think, again, the reason why we do this is because we have to be able to unlock opportunities to continue to support all these businesses across the UK, providing value, providing jobs. And, you know, the UK has had a very healthy business environment. It takes about half an hour to set up a company in the UK, and you can do it online. It's very cheap to do. Cutting down that red tape for setting up a company is really important, because once you're a company, you can then apply for the kinds of tax breaks or the kinds of funding that the government makes available. So we have a very, very important relief which the industry lobbied to get and won in 2014. It came into being, which is the Video Games Tax Relief, VGTR. And this means if you qualify and you pass what's called a cultural test, because it has to ensure you're reflecting British or European stories, or people working on those stories are EEA or UK residents, and the kinds of themes that you're doing, you can get 20% back on costs of development if you're a company, which for a lot of companies is life and death. It's a lot of money you can get back. Or even if you're a smallest studio in the world, if you're a one-person studio, we had examples of when we were educating people about how it works, an example of a one-person studio who takes all the lead roles. So I do the programming, I do the audio design, I do this, and they pass the cultural test. It doesn't matter what size budget you have or what size studio you have, as long as you're a business and you're incurring costs of development and you pass the cultural test, you probably will get your video game tax relief. It's a really important tax relief. It's not as generous as the ones in Canada, and the Canadians took all our talent away in the 2000s. But we have other things that make up for that, I think. We have R&D, research and development tax breaks as well across all industries. And we've been involved very much in what we call the creative industries sector deal, which is where all the creative industries come together and say to government, you need to invest and support growth in these particular areas. So government has invested in artificial intelligence, audiences of the future, which we kind of giggle at, because we're like, you know, some of the more traditional creative industries' idea of audience of the future is stuff that our audiences are doing already, but that's okay. And they're really putting funds into helping those businesses in those clusters outside of London to really grow and scale. And we have this, the UK Games Fund, which is very important, because that provides, it's an application process, but that provides grants to help develop prototypes, to help you get to that next stage, so that you have a vertical slice or something that you can show a publisher or an investor or anyone else. So that's incredibly important, and we continue to lobby to make sure that government funds that. And we have other stuff that helps support the ecosystem, some of which is up for, we don't know what's happening, because a lot of it's European Union funding. So who knows? Maybe we'll get some answers after the 31st of January about what happens to those. This is a report that we worked with. So the VGTR is administered, and the cultural test is administered by a team at the British Film Institute, because the VGTR is based on what the film industry, high-end TV drama, and children's TV has benefited from. So you hear all the stories about Game of Thrones, yes, being filmed just around the corner, but also in Dublin and places like that. So, really it's about incentivizing people to come to the UK and to employ people in the UK to make that film or to make that game or to make that children's TV. And it's important that they consistently show government how valuable it is. And so we worked with them on this report, which was released in 2018 called Screen Business Report. And it's incredibly important for government and for money people. It was based on data in 2016 because government data is always a little bit behind the times. It was also the first year that we had a full set of data for video games tax relief since it came in partway through 2014. And what this showed, I've put a link at the end of this to the report so you can have a look. But importantly, what it shows is that this incentive in video games tax relief is important in job creation. It's important because 31% of UK development spend was supported by video games tax relief. And 68% of those projects would not have been made had it not been for this relief. And importantly, it supports jobs directly, it helps companies employ more people, but for every pound that the government gives to companies in tax relief, the government gets £4 back from the games industry because of the PAYE, so taxes, the employment benefit that comes with, or the benefit that comes with employing people who just decide to live in the UK. So that is an important figure because it's not just giving away free money, it's an investment. So it's a return on the investment of £4. And crucially, through this report, we can see that we are the most productive jobs. We're high-value jobs, which again is really important for any economy and any country, way above the UK industrial average and more than any other screen sectors. So this is a little bit about some of the intense data work that we do in order to underpin our lobbying efforts. But I think it's fair to say that the last year and a half has been an absolute bloody nightmare. In fact, since 2016, I'm not talking about Brexit, although that is pretty much a bit of an unstable nightmare. It's really been about this kind of moral panic about games. And I think the term loot boxes has become something synonymous with anything in the press's eyes, which has been a challenge for us. We have made the analogies of loot boxes to Kinder Eggs, to LOL surprise dolls, to Panini physical football stickers that you can buy. But generally, there's been a little bit of a moral panic in the UK. And that's because they're just generally in the UK, we have major concerns about how normal gambling is across society on high streets, gambling shops. So the government is concerned with this, but the press sort of picks up on things very, very quickly without necessarily knowing all the facts. So we have done an incredible amount to try and educate the press, but also to respond. We are now getting press questions on anything from video games tax relief to loot boxes to privacy, everything, almost daily, which we've never had before. And one of the things that a good trade body does, yes, is that human shield and education. What we'd really love to do more of is pitch positive stories. But speaking as a former journalist, it's really hard to get a good news story into the news. Everyone likes a sensationalist story. So I think for the last kind of 18 months, the team and I have felt like the world is on fire and our industry is on fire and oh help, I need some therapy. But you know what, it's okay. Because I think this is absolutely our cultural tipping point. Every single sector, whether that be music, film, television, the printing press, cave paintings, there's been this moment where there's this panic because you don't necessarily understand it, or it's a different form of entertainment or experience. I love this book by Dr. Pete Etchells, who's a fantastic academic based in the UK, and he wrote a book called Lost in a Good Game, and he says that games capture our attention in such a complete way. That games capture our attention in such a complete way is understandably one of the things many people worry about. But that same immersiveness is fundamental to the way games allow us to explore what it means to be human. Immersion is an actual fact of games. You know, it's difficult with people who don't play games and engage in games to explain what it is. You can, luckily, now tell people to go and watch it on YouTube or on Twitch, but unless it actually requires you to take part in order to understand. So I think one of the things that I've been thinking about as I sort of pitch my new sort of strategy, if you like, to my board, which is a board of 25 people, is really about responsibility, responsibility, responsibility. How do we, as a trade body, really help to protect your rights and interests as games creators and businesses, but also show that we are a responsible industry. We care about our players. We care about ethics. We care because players are communities. We don't see players as consumers or audiences. They are a community that we want to keep coming back, and we want them to come back and enjoy themselves. So what is our responsibility, and what is our responsibility to planet Earth? There's a lot of movement now, obviously, coming to the games industry about single-use plastic, about our carbon footprint, and I think, you know, our overall responsibility to our impact on people, on the economy, on society, on the planet, is something that we need to think about. So we've been doing quite a few kind of short campaigns and longer-term campaigns to try and make sure that people are understanding our responsibility and what we're already doing as an industry, but also to motivate people, to motivate our thousands of people, millions of people, billions of people around the world who play games, but also thousands of people who work in games and have this incredible medium that's incredibly impactful at their fingertips. So as a result of some of the intense scrutiny, let's say, that the press has given us, particularly around parents and my kid's spending so much money, or I can't get them off Fortnite, we launched, seems like months ago, but it was on the 12th of January, a Get Smart About Play campaign. Now, I mentioned Ask About Games, which is an industry-funded resource which any families and parents can go and find out about age ratings, find out about family controls, find out about the kinds of games that are suitable to play for different age groups. And that's open in there, and we have an editor who works on that. But this new campaign is really based around these 4 principles of talking to your children, finding out about what they do, why they're playing certain types of games, finding out about the vocabulary of games like Fortnite, which means you don't unplug the machine halfway through when you're about to let down your entire team. So learning and asking your kids about what they're doing, learning about the technical settings that are not so technical, as in they're easy to use, going online to look at the resources, talking to children about how to set boundaries around times, what's appropriate, what's not, and reminding parents and carers that they're the ones in charge, right? If your kid wants to run across that road in the middle of cars, you're the one in charge that says no. And that's hard in this modern age. So we launched this campaign, big media campaign, with a spokesperson, Rio Ferdinand, because we thought, hey, he'd be great. He plays games regularly with his kids, and he didn't realize these family controls exist. So here he was.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! The Get Smart About Play campaign provides parents and guardians with practical tips on how to achieve balance and set parameters on the amount of time and money is spent on play. P. Play with your kids. Understand what games they play and what they love about them. L. Learn about parental controls on your console and how to use them. A. Ask what your kids think and discuss ground rules before setting restrictions. Y. You're in charge. Set restrictions that work for your family. Setting up parental controls is straightforward. Head to www.askaboutgames.com to find a step-by-step guide.
We also care very deeply about diversity and inclusion in this industry because we have a shortage of people who are skilled to work in our industry globally. So we need as many people as possible to be taking up careers in the industry. And we're next week on the 4th of February, whenever that is, it's all blurring into one, we've worked on a diversity and inclusion pledge for the industry, which has been fairly painful, actually. But it's really just some key things that businesses can do to make their organizations and their workplace cultures more attractive to people, to attract talent, and more diverse and more inclusive. And we're going to be creating guidance and help and signposts to different resources for companies to use to make sure that they are becoming more inclusive. And we want 200 games businesses in the UK signed up by the end of 2021, which will reach 50% of the games industry workforce. We're also, as part of that, on the same day, launching something that I'm so proud of my team for making happen, which I think is the first actual UK games industry census. I think globally we kind of talk about diversity in terms of very binary things like gender, and we very often use very outdated figures that might come from America or might come from here. In the UK, we use the figure of 19% females in the games industry, but that was from research done in 2015, I think. It's really outdated, and the sample size was so small, you couldn't then look at other indicators of diversity and across job roles. So we launched this census with the University of Sheffield last year, and it will challenge a lot of our assumptions. And I was at the airport coming out here, going through the 78-page report before it goes to press. But it looks at gender, it takes an intersectional look at diversity and who we are. It looks at ethnicity, it looks at sexual orientation, it looks at neurodiversity, which is autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia. It looks at mental health. How do we feel as industry workers? Nationality, social background. This is really important because this census was filled out by 20% of the games workforce in the UK, over almost 4,000 individuals. That's very significant data set. So we can cut that data in all sorts of ways, and we can use it as a benchmark to understand how any interventions or any things we do as an industry are actually improving our diversity. I knew I'd be way over time. I still got, yeah. Because for us to be a 21st century storytelling medium that really has impact and fulfills the power and potential that we have, we do need to have different stories. We do need to have difference. We do need to have people who have a different take on life, who can tell different stories in different ways, that appeal to new people, new players who didn't think that that games were for them. And we are really a powerful 21st century storytelling medium. Another one of my favorite quotes and thinkers is Eric Zimmerman, and he wrote back in 2013 Manifesto for a Ludic Century. And he talks about like making music, telling stories, and creating images, playing games is part of what it means to be human. Again, this sense that play and the exploration in the way that we enable people to have in our products is about finding out about our place in the world, sometimes tackling difficult and tricky topics. A song can move you to tears or fill you with rage, and you can get lost in a good book, but only in games like Minecraft can you gain a sense of pride or of achievement for having truly participated. You're in control, and the only thing stopping you is your imagination. This sense of agency that games give you, this sense of witnessing, this sense of participation and empowerment is something that no other media can do. And we celebrate in the UK that creativity and that storytelling and that power through the BAFTA Games Awards. I'm BAFTA Games Chair, and I'm very proud of BAFTA, which represents film, games, and television, in that order, by the way. And they're like our Oscars. They're our equivalent to our Oscars. And the BAFTA Games Awards happens during the London Games Festival on the 2nd of April. You're all very welcome. It's a fantastic black tie, red carpet affair. It's a fantastic celebration of our creativity. And what I love about it is that this group of peers, this academy, recognizes the creativity that goes into games. It's not about how successful your game was or how many sales you had. It's about the craft. It's about the artistic achievement. I spent a lot of hours in Death Stranding over Christmas, and I've done a lot of running and quite a lot of showering in the game. But it's phenomenal. Games like 1111, Memories Retold, beautiful game, and in one section you get to play as a cat in a trench. It's awesome. The music's fantastic. But this beautiful art style, these are the kind of games that politicians need to play as well, and they need to know about. The return of Obra Dinn, who won Artistic Achievement in the BAFTAs, beating Red Dead Redemption 2. A bit controversial, but well-deserved. These ways in which we're experimenting with this art form is phenomenal. And of course, Dreams, which is finally here by Media Molecule, one of our favorite studios in the UK, which is not really a game. There's games within it. It's a creation tool. It's incredible. What on earth are we creating in terms of the future generation with something like this? I can't wait to see. And of course, we've got these new kinds of formats that have made a return from the old days when we used to have these kind of, I used to get pitched at BBC, these kind of choose your own adventure, sort of it's like a film, but it's not really a film, and it's not really a game, and they were just clunky. But we've got games now like Erica, that if you haven't played it, incredible way of controlling it, and an incredible live action, Telling Lies, of course, which is Sam Barlow's follow-up. Then there's Netflix Bandersnatch, which, well, anyway. And of course, Simai, I know, is going to be here at some point. Recontact London, Playable Arts. You know, what do we call these things? If they are games, but what are we calling them? And this is where I'm so excited by the future. But the future, again, needs to rely on making sure that we're continuing to get the future into our industry, that we're talking to kids age 8 before it's too late, and saying, if you're interested in drawing, have a look at the games industry. BAFTA celebrates new talent and breakthrough talent through an initiative called BAFTA Breakthrough Brits. They do these really glamorous photo shoots, which nobody ever looks like that afterwards. They sort of go back to their normal wear. We're all very fashionable in the creative industries. And there's always about 4 or 5 games talent, up-and-coming talent who are recognized. And they're given mentoring, and it's across TV and film and games. And it's a really fantastic initiative to try and spotlight up-and-coming talent and what they're doing. And we also at BAFTA do the Young Game Designers competition, which I'm incredibly passionate about. The patron of BAFTA is the Duke of Cambridge, Prince William, and he is also the patron for the Young Game Designers competition. And this is a nationwide schools competition from 10 to 18-year-olds, 2 age categories, and there's game concept, and then there's game making. So you can either make a game or have a concept for the game. And what's really striking is the kinds of themes that come through with the young people's ideas. A lot of them have a social conscience. They're so serious, children, nowadays. They really, of course, deeply care about our impact on climate and planet. And they deeply care about things like depression and self-harm. And they want to find a way to express that. And they choose to do that through games. And one of the games that has really been phenomenal is by Emily Mitchell. And a new charity called Safe in Our World has been set up around her. She was one of the BAFTA Young Game Designer winners in 2017. And I'm very proud to just be made a patron of Safe in Our World. And her game, Fractured Minds, I'll show you a bit of what it's about and how important our medium is.
I'm Emily Mitchell and I'm working on Fractured Minds. The thing that really appeals to me about video games is I think that you can just escape into another world and you can just kind of forget about everything else. So I just thought maybe I should make a game. I suffer from quite severe anxiety, so I wanted to make a game that actually means something and something that people can relate to, but in their own way, if that makes sense. So for me, the game is about anxiety, but for another person, it could be about depression or whichever mental health issue. I think I did the puzzle format because it was a good reflection of how mental health is in real life. So it's a struggle to open the door into the next room. If I had to describe anxiety in one word, it would probably be exhausting. Kind of feels like everything's going so fast that you can't catch your breath, but at the same time it's so slow that every second feels like 10 minutes. Having the BAFTA deadline, it gave me something to work towards, and it really gave me motivation to actually do it. When I found out that it had been shortlisted, it was actually my birthday, so it was like the best birthday ever, to be honest. On the actual day of the awards ceremony, in the train station, I actually had a really bad panic attack. I was actually going to go home, but then I knew that if I didn't go, I would probably regret it for the rest of my life, so I went and then I won.
It is Fractured Minds by Emily Mitchell.
Woo! And that was like the best feeling in the whole world, because it went from the worst day to the best day, and it was just amazing. Having the game come out on console and PC and everything is just really exciting to have people actually play my game. I think that the Safe in Our World campaign is a really amazing idea, because it's just building this support network around the gaming community, especially as a lot of young people play games, and because a lot of young people suffer from mental health issues, it'll be really nice for them to just know that they're not alone and there's a lot of help available for them. There's a lot of stigma around mental health. It's basically an invisible illness from the outside. So Fractured Minds is trying to allow people to experience what it's like, so maybe they can try and understand more and empathise more with people suffering from mental health issues.
It makes me really quite emotional listening to her and how she feels the power of games to help other people understand what is one of the biggest public health issues of our modern age, particularly amongst men. Still, suicide is still the biggest killer in the UK of men 45 years and under. So another program that I will end with that really is trying to ensure the future of our games industry, to inspire more Emilys to come in and really evolve our industry as Digital Schoolhouse. It is all about play-based learning. It's all about giving confidence and teaching the teachers, who sometimes get more nervous about teaching computer science to pupils because the pupils know more about computer science than them often. And this is really trying to tackle the problem as well of not every school has computers, kits that work. They're so closed off in terms of the tech that they enable. So this is really about understanding foundational computational thinking by using Play-Doh, by using Lego, understanding how RAM works, and understanding algorithms through things like using Just Dance and dancing or magic tricks. So it's all funded by the industry. It's an application process, it's a cascade model. We have 55 schoolhouses across the country. We train them, they invite local primary school kids and their teachers into the class. They do these incredibly fun workshops, and by that, in a year, we've reached 4,000 teachers and 32,000 school kids and given them confidence. And you can see some of the kind of activities which are really hands-on, and sometimes they're just paper-based, so that they get this understanding before they even touch a computer. Another thing we do as part of the Digital Schoolhouse program is around esports. We know that esports is a growing sector globally, but we created an accidental success, which is a nationwide schools tournament. And schools compete. We use Super Smash Brothers this year. Schools compete within the schools to be the team that represents the school. They then do regional qualifiers, and then they come to London in the London Games Festival and compete against each other. And I'm going to show you and end with a video. But really, crucially, the thing about this is that it's an immersive careers experience. It's not just about being a competitor. It's also job roles with industry mentors that we set up around how to do team management, social media management, and so on. So it's really exposing kids to this excitement, because kids don't get to compete in team sports anymore at schools, but they can do this. And I'll show you the impact of this as well. And then that's it. Ish.
I am very excited. It's been a long time coming, a long journey.
Fantastic to be here at the Gfinity Arena.
We didn't think we'd get this far, but we are here.
The whole atmosphere is amazing. I'm super excited.
We've got 8 teams here competing for the Overwatch finals. The stakes are high and everyone is clearly pumped.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome along to London, welcome along to the Gfinity Arena, and most importantly, welcome along to the grand finals of this year's Digital Schoolhouse competition.
We started with 3,500 students, fulfilling a variety of roles from players, tournament admins, community managers, to shoutcasters.
How excited are you to just get into casting this action? I'm sure we've got some amazing players. I can't wait to see what they're going to do in these games.
Genji pulling it out of the bag, but Winston supporting him, and now we've seen Bob coming into play. Ladies and gentlemen, Bob in the chat. For them to maintain this through the next few games is going to be the interesting thing to see.
I think they're going to bring that one into the final.
You can tell that the Digital Schoolhouse helps these kids come out of their skin.
Technical skills are incredibly important, but if you want to be able to move forward, you need to be able to couple that with a range of soft skills, from communication to leadership to presentation, and a whole raft of skills. That's what we try to do within this tournament, and that's what we continue to build on. It's what the students learn, and it's what's going to help change their lives.
We've had some fantastic Overwatch action already today, but now we have some of the pros from the gaming industry ready to answer some questions from everyone and tell us a little bit about the games industry.
I was so happy to be invited to be on the panel, and I think it's great to have the opportunity to talk to people who clearly have a lot of talent and a lot of interest in getting into it, and actually give them some advice and guidance that may set them on a path.
What would you recommend to anybody who would like to get into the gaming industry?
Recognise what skills that you require in order to do that job and put together a way of showcasing that. I actually really like the questions that got asked, because it wasn't all focused on one point. There are a lot of variety of questions and people who are interested in different parts of the gaming industry.
It's really important that we still need coders, but it's really great that actually this tournament actually highlights the other careers that might be available.
They find out that there's more than just playing. They can get involved actually in creating games, making games, so whether it's programming or art or animation or any of the other different opportunities that are out there.
Students have had a great experience of working together as a team. It doesn't matter whether they win, lose or draw, they're building up great strategy skills by communicating with each other really well.
They have been practicing break, lunch, after school. Every time they get, they're on the PCs together as a team, working as a unit. While they're not on the computers, they're making sure that they're not just teammates, but also a family. Amazing, amazing to see.
The feedback we've had from teachers has been fantastic. They've told us that the students that participate, they actually get involved in a lot more activities at school. Their study has improved, their attendance improved, so there's so many positives coming out of this event.
The results have been fantastic. The students come back and talking about learning and actually putting their learning into practice. It's been amazing to see that in place.
So that's it. Here's some useful links. There are lots more. I can make sure that these slides are circulated. We've got lots of really interesting things coming up that I can't talk about. That's my contact details. I'm happy to be contacted, whatever. And here's some of the initiative links that we do. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for going over time. I talk too much.